Welcome, Informatics 2B students. We'll be going through the previous part, the previous semester test two, right? This was a semester test two, 2022 semester test two. So we'll be going through it. So let me download the template and let's get started. So there's the template. So just in case, let me delete it from here and then let me download it again. So download, continue download only. And then now it's downloading. So this one is this template was a bit tricky. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised like you guys having issues. It was a bit tricky, but we'll get through all the tricky parts and then show you how to solve them or how to approach them. So the template is done downloading. So let me unzip it and then extract all. Yeah, so that's done. And then I'm gonna move this folder into the outside so that I have this. So let me run my website, and then let me also run my service. So there we go. Then okay. So we'll start since in the say in the service everything is there, like the table is there. All you have to do is create the methods. What we're gonna do is we're gonna start with the website. So there's the website, and then I'm gonna expand. So we only have two pages. We only have home and about meal, right? And then yes, it's gonna keep showing me those errors. And then let me just change something here. The tools option, and then dark, one dark pro. Okay, yeah. So I like this theme better, so I'll just use this theme. So there's a practical, right? So let's see how we can, the first step, right, is to dynamically populate. So obviously, before you dynamically populate, you need to create methods in your service application so that you call those methods and pass in the data that these methods will use to initialize or work with the database, right? So in my case, since everything has been explained here, right? Everything has been explained here. So I'm not actually working from scratch. I'm not downloading the template and then converting the template to ASP.NET. I didn't have to do that. It was already converted for me. So with that being said, that means I can just go straight to my service because it's even telling me what type of information will be required. So I'm gonna go to my service. So let's just go straight to the service. So I'm gonna go to my service and then there's the service. This would be the interface, right? Or sort of like the header file. And then the .svc would be the implementation file, or sort of what is this? Okay, sort of like the implementation file, the CVP file. I just thought about something. Okay, at least there's no registering, so I won't need the secrecy file because I currently do not have it right now. So that means I would have to stop the video. So let's check our data connections, right? I don't know why it does this. Okay, so the first time you run it, you see that it won't show any databases, right? So you have to look for a .mdf file, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So it's always under app data. So you're gonna go under app data and then you expand. So you're gonna go under app data, and then you expand, and then you see that .mdf file, which is a file for your database, right? So you're gonna double click that because you wanna open the database. After double clicking it, you'll go to the side and you see that, you see, now it shows that paper a.mdf. Then I'm gonna have my tables here. So there's everything in the table. And then I can just, because I want to see the data types, right? I can just double click on the table and then it's going to expand, it's going to open the table. So I'm going to double click on the table name and then it should open the table because I just want to see the data types that we used. So yeah, so price is of typed money, which is basically decimal, right? If it's money, just know it's in decimal and it's explicitly decimal. You can use double. I think it won't complain, but then there's a decimal data type for a reason. It's for when you have numbers, when you have like an application that deals with like real world prices, like prices of products, you use the decimal data type. So since we now know the data types, I can just leave it here to just check, right? I'll just leave it the table here open so that I can go back to the data types if I forget. But we always know that name, description, and category and image, they're always strings. So that means it's pretty much the same thing. Price is still pretty much a floating point value or a decimal in our case. So there we go. Let's create the methods, right? So let's see what we're required to do. So you're supposed to dynamically populate each tab. So yeah, this practical was not a joke. It was not playing around with the appropriate meal types, right? What does that mean? It means that when you click on the meal type, it should show that's only that meal. So if you clicked on breakfast, it should show breakfast. If you clicked on if you clicked on, I think there's dinner and lunch. Yeah. If you clicked on dinner, it should show dinner. If you clicked on lunch, it should show lunch. I don't know why he set the starting page to, or maybe I opened about. Let me just double check which page I opened. Oh, I opened about. I thought he had set it to open. Okay, you see, he didn't. Yeah, and then, so let me do this. Let me set my practical to always load the home page, no matter where I am. So web, and then start page should be the home page, and then Control S, done. So that even when the assistants test your project, they won't assume it's not working. Because if they don't do this thing, they'll assume it's not working. So let's see the products before we manipulate the template. So you see, this is how the products look. If I press on lunch, it shows me only lunch items. If I press on dinner, it shows me only dinner. So that means that we have to store the type. And if you check the table, it's actually called category. So if we come here, you see category. It's actually called category. Category just means what type. What category is it? Is it breakfast, lunch, or dinner? We'll use that to dynamically populate so that when this div is clicked, it should show only lunch. If this one is clicked, it should show only breakfast. This one's going to be a bit unique compared to the way you guys have been doing it, right? Because this one it involves when this specific button or option is clicked or div, it shows that specific category of food of a menu item, and then we'll do the reservation. So pretty much it's going to be pretty much straightforward. So let's go back to our project and then cancel. So that's what they were talking about. When you click on each tab, when you click on breakfast, it should only show breakfast. That's what bullet number 1 means. You'll get marks if it does that. If it doesn't, you lose marks. And then each item should display the item's image, name, price, and short description only. You see, the keyword is only. So when we create our function, we should only pass in this piece of data. Obviously, we'll also need something. You remember the category. We'll also need that because we need to do number one. So I need to also pass in the category. And when it comes to about, remember the about mail page, it needs an ID for each product. That means when you're getting all the products here, I need to also get the ID. Even though they told you here explicitly that they should only display that. That's only in that only has to do with displaying. It doesn't have to do with what the pieces of information we have to retrieve from the table. We're going to retrieve more than this, right? Okay, so we'll check. And then it says filter by the active category. It means that only take the products that are active. So instead of, remember when you're getting the user, right? Or when you are registering the user, we compare the password and the email that we are passing with the password and email in the database to confirm if the user already exists, right? So here, that line of code that we write to extract information from the table, they said extract using the active row or the active attribute in the database, which is very straightforward. So let's see, what should we call? So we need to be able to do the two things, right? Get the all products. So right, that's the products. So in my case, right, I know you won't really see it. You won't see the issue now. But then there's an issue in the table name. There's actually, if you check your, there's an issue in the table name, right? If you check your toolbox, right? There's something called a menu, and then within Visual Studio, there's also something called menu item. So this means that your code is gonna crash because there's a table with this exact same name. And if we try to use a different name, let's say you try to name it to menu, it's gonna cause a conflict with what the tool that's inside the toolbox. So we're going to have to come up with a unique name. I will call my table, I'll rename it to food because it's food, right? I'm working with food or meals. Yeah, you could also call it a meal. Let me use meal. You could call it food, that's up to you. So since I'm going to do that, right? I'll the functions that I'm going to create. Remember the way you name the functions, it doesn't really matter. Does your code work? That's all they care about. So I'm gonna create a function that gets the products. So it returns a list of products. Excuse me. So it's gonna return a list of products. But before I do that, I'm forgetting to link to SQL classes. I don't think we have it here. Yeah, it's not there. Yeah, so we need to add a link to SQL classes. So we need to basically create classes that represent our tables. So basically converting the tables into objects so that we treat them as, or we work with them as objects so that we can write C# code to interact with those objects, or which in turn interact with the tables or the columns and row or yeah, the columns inside of my table. So I'm going to right click and say add okay, let me just say new item. And then we're gonna go to data since we're dealing with data. And then I already have a SQL database. You see the .mdf file, it's already there. What's left is for me to link to SQL classes. I'll call it paper A. Let me see. I'll call it paper A. Let me check something here. Oh, there's already a database. This database it's already called paper A. I'll just that means I'll just name it paper A data, right? And then I'll just put underscores to make it readable. We can just leave it as data classes one. That's fine. And then then we drag and drop our tables. Remember that Okay, before we do that, if you check here, these tables actually they already have data for you. You don't need to create a function to add the products. Answer the question. Do not answer your own questions. There's already information here. So don't be out here creating an add menu item function. Don't do that. There's already data. I think even reservation. Let's check reservation you have to add. I think reservation is the one that's empty because you have to create a new reservation. Yeah, we have to create a new reservation house on our own, right? So I'm going to drag and drop my table. So my tables now will be interpreted or will work as objects. You'll see that menu item is going to cause errors. I just want the error to be caused first so that you see that it will cause an error. I can't just say it will cause an error and you don't see the error. You'd be like, for all you know, I could be lying. So I'm going to make the function or return a list of what menu item. You see, now you see that it has made it a class. Let me zoom in so that, but then we did talk about this thing. Remember when you link to SQL classes, it means turn my tables into classes. You see, it went and took the menu item table and made it a class. It's a class. So I work with it as an object, which makes it easier for me to write C# code. So I'm going to say list menu item, and then I'm going to call it get items, right? Call it get items. But then the thing is, I'm going to have to return it, change it to meal. So I'm going to have to call it get meals. It's fine. I'll put the error on purpose there. I'll just leave it like that. And then here I need to be able to get a menu item, right? So get item by ID. Or okay, yeah, let me call it get item by ID because if you call it get item and this one is called get items, students have a tendency of mixing them up. So I'm just going to call it get item by ID, which is self-explanatory. And I'm getting the product by ID. Let me think. Mm, so I'm going to work. Okay, you don't have to do this, right? You don't have to do what I'm about to do now. It's just for the sake of me being accurate, being logical, being reasonable. And if you also check here, you see the product, they start from 1 and then they increment by 3, right? That means that I always have positive numbers. So I'll make it an unsigned int, basically a uint. You don't have to do it like that, right? I just want to be accurate. You can just make it an int, that's fine. I'll make it a uint, an unsigned integer, meaning only positive numbers can be passed inside this function, which will be the ID, yeah, right? And then, okay, let's do one thing at a time, right? Let's start with dynamically populating, and then we'll go to the about page. And they said you should format the price to two decimal places. There's a math class inside C# where you get functions to do any math calculations, right? That is whether you're rounding off, um, anything that's related to maths, right? So I'm gonna come here and then I'm going to get the item, right? So what I would do is so I need to get the items. Okay, let me give myself some time to process this. Before we get okay, yeah. The thing is my head is still on computer science 2B. I'm thinking about UDP and TCP right now. So let me create a list, right? Because the function is supposed to return a list of items. So let's normalize putting comments here. Let me see. Okay, so this gets all the meals from the menu item table. I must normalize having comments, or that's how you spell table. So this function expects me to return a list. So I'm going to create a local list, right? A local variable, meaning that it can only be accessed within this function. So a local variable array, and then I'm going to call it items. Or you can call it obj items for object. That doesn't really matter. Then don't forget to instantiate it. If you do not instantiate it, your code is going to crash. Remember, these are objects. They need to be instantiated. You did C++. This is nothing new. And then I'm going to get the products, right? So I'm going to use the keyword dynamic. Dynamic, it means that it's dynamic, right? It will be determined at runtime. Is it compile time? No, is it runtime? I forgot which one it is exactly, but then it means that the data type won't be determined yet. It will be determined at, I think at compile time, yeah. It will be determined at compile time. When we compile the code, that's when the data type will be determined. It's dynamic. By dynamic, it means that it can accommodate any type, whether that's one item or multiple items. In our case, we want to get multiple items, so that's why I'm going to use dynamic. So dynamic, I'll call it temp items because these are just temporary items that I'm getting from my table. And then I'm going to run a MySQL statement to get the products, right? So I'm going to say from what, and then I create a variable. So I'm going to call it T. From T in what's the table? You see, we are missing the database context to be able to refer to our database. So I'm going to come, where am I supposed to? Yeah, I'm going to go here. And then remember what we called our link to SQL. What did we name it? We named it paper A data. And then it should append data context at the end. I shouldn't have called it paper A data. That's a bad name because now it's going to be paper underscore A underscore data context, which, get what I'm saying? It wasn't a proper name. Let me let me fix that. Let me remove this. Let me use a proper name because now it's going to be data context, which is a little bit redundant, if you ask me. And then link to SQL classes. I'm gonna call it paper underscore A, which is going to be different from this one, paper A, right? So I'll use the underscore to distinguish it. So paper A, and then we just drag and drop again. Then come on, drag, and then drop. Okay, we are done with that. So I've named it paper A. So now I'm going to say paper A. As you can see, it appends after the name of your database model, right? Or the link to SQL classes model. It's going to append the data context. So paper underscore A data context. And then I'm just going to call it DB. Then I need to instantiate it. Don't forget, it's an object. You need to instantiate it. So this allows me to communicate. This allows you to communicate with your tables, including the rows or the individual attributes. It allows you to do that. So I'm going to say from T in my table, what's the table? So I'm going to refer to the table. Like I said, this helps us to communicate with our tables by using this variable that I've called DB. So I'm going to scroll down here, and then I'm going to say DB dot menu item. So it always appends an S at the end because obviously you're going to have multiple of those things. Even though you should name your tables in singular form, when you run the SQL MySQL statement or SQL statement, it's going to append that S to say that these are multiple things, right? So there's obviously going to be more than one menu item. So hence it's going to call it menu items. And then I need to run a where clause. And remember what it says, filter. You need to understand what this filter means. Remember what we're doing right now. We are getting all the menu items, but we need to filter them. Filter them meaning that we need to choose specific ones. That's why I'm running a where statement, which is the same as like running an if statement. To say if this is the condition, then get only those products that meet that condition. What's the condition? T dot active. So now I'm remember this variable it references my table. So now I can say T and then I get a specific attribute from my table. So T dot active, it is equals to dot equals to 1. That means that I want only, so that means from my table, menu items table, where the active status or the active value is 1, get those products. How do I now get the products? It's simple. I just say select them. So select T. Remember, T helps me refers to my table. So select T just means select everything inside T. So it's going to select and return all that long list of menu items or products or meals, whatever you want to call it. So it's going to return multiple of them. If you want to select the first one or to return one, that's when you use the dot first or default. It only gets the first one that matches that case, it only retrieves that one. So in my case, I want to retrieve everything within the table. So I'm just going to leave it empty. This will return a whole list or a whole collection. And then after it returns here, right, there's the products, right? I'm going to check if they're not, if it's not now. If temp items is not equals to now, then I can get my products, right? I can return the list. Else, if it's equals to now, I just return now. Remember, this function doesn't return integer. So I can't say return -1 or 1 or 2. I'm just going to say return null because there's nothing, there's null. So just return null. And then we are done here. So now we can get the items. If you wanted to, right? What I'm about to write right now, right? You don't have to. If I'm being quite frank, if I'm being frank with you, you don't have to write what I'm about right now. Right now, there's a reason why we write it. The reason why we write that is because we are trying to select specific rows, right? Remember our table has all of these rows. It is the ID row, the name row, the description row. It has all of these things. But then if you look at everything, do I need to get back on special? Nope. Do I need to get back active? Nope. So the only two things that I do not want to get back is active and on special. Category, I need category. Why? Because if you check the first bullet, it says dynamically populate with the appropriate meal type. So that means I need to get the meal type of each meal, which is actually called category in the table. And they told you to get back the name, then they told you to get back the description. They also told you to get back the price and the image. So that means I only need everything from name up until image. The active and on special, I do not need those. Since I do not need those, I'm going to create a temporary, I'm going to go through each of the items here and select only the rows that I want. That's what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to select only the rows or attributes, the rows or attributes that I want. So how do we do that? We go, remember my SQL statement will get all the products or menu items. We go through each of them by doing what? A for each. You could do, let me see, I think you can. You could say temp items dot, okay, I say to use var, but then it's fine. Let's just use a for each loop. You could use a normal loop, the normal for loop. You could do that. That's up to you. So for loop, I know each item, right? You could use var. That's fine. The problem is if you use var here, when you start accessing within the for loop, it won't it might suggest the values or it might not. So I don't want that. I want it to suggest me the rows when I'm typing to autocomplete basically. So I'm gonna call it as it is. It's menu item, item in temp items. So it gets a menu item at a time within this list of items. And then it's going to store each item within the item variable here. So I can basically this reference is one item. So that means I can access its rows or columns, whatever you want to call it. So in order for me to access those, I need to, because remember, I need to, remember when it gets this object, right? It already has all of these columns, right? Or I think they're called columns. All of these columns, let's just say columns for simplicity's sake. All it's gonna get all these columns, right? Which is the name, row, description, price, category. It's gonna get all of those columns and it's already stored. I cannot go to item and say return item dot without these two columns. I can't do that. The way I can select those to remove those two columns, I can create a temporary object here. I can say obj item is equals to new menu item, and then I just copy the values that I only the values that I want from this item because I don't want everything within the item. Remember what we talked about. We're not gonna need active. We're also not gonna need on special. That they didn't tell us to return that. Category we need it because we need to dynamically populate based on category. Price, we need that because they told us. Description, we need it. Name, we need it. So we only want to select things we need from item. So how do we do that? So my object item, this temporary object that I've created, it's empty, right? Remember, this is empty. This one has information. Why? Because I'm taking each item from this list of items that I got from my table. And if you remember when I showed you that this table menu item actually has data, I wasn't lying. You see, it has data. So I'm actually getting that data. And then I'm going to say object item, right? And then dot, let's start by setting the name, right? We need the name. Remember, right now I'm selecting only the ones that I need from item. So item dot get dot name, which is just text. So I just copy the name from this item. So I only copy the things that I want into this template object that I've created. Dot description, we need the description, item dot description, and then obj item dot category. Remember they said category is needed, and then item dot category. Oh, before I forget, right? Remember when it comes to dynamically pop, what is this about meal page, right? The meal page we're going to need to display all of these, which is fine because we get them here. But then remember the mail page, it needs a an ID for the product. So that means when I'm writing this get items function, it's called get items, right? Yeah. I also need to get the ID. I was about to forget, so I need to get the ID. So dot ID, copy that ID because I'm gonna need the ID. But then things like active and on special, I'm not gonna need those. So after name, description, I also need price, then item dot price. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We need the name, image, name, price, and short description. So before I forget the image, obj item dot image is equals to item dot image. And those who think they're smart, they're gonna just copy my code and submit. You guys are gonna get. Remember, second year is very serious. If you continue copying, you get expelled. Just keep that in mind. You go back home. So don't take chances and try to submit my code. Watch the video and then attempt and write it on your own. Don't submit my code. Because the same way you're gonna have that funny idea you're having right now, some other 20 or more students are gonna have that same funny idea. That means all 22 and might even be 100 students who submit the same code. All of you are gonna get copy. Some of you already have been getting copies. At this point, though you'll have a disciplinary hearing. And then now you have to talk to the dean and things like that, explain yourself. Now you get expelled. Stop trying to take shortcuts. if this behavior continues, I'm gonna stop uploading the code. If I ever hear that there's a student copying code, sending code, I'm gonna stop uploading the code. You just have to look at the video, copy the code while watching the video. I mean, how stupid can you be? Like, why would you submit something that you know someone else is gonna submit? And why don't you just watch the video? Watch the video, do it, attempt it on your own, submit. You get stuck, go rewatch the video. Simple. And don't be using the same names. That's how you get copy. Don't be all of you calling it obj item. Call it obj1 or O1. Call it something. Be unique, or else you're gonna fail dismally. With that being said, let's continue. So after I've chosen the information that I want. This is where I'm choosing the information that I want from my item object. I do not want the whole item object, meaning that I do not want only all these columns. I don't want all these columns. So after I'm done, I can append to this list. I can add it to this list. This list behaves like an array list in how is this, Java. If you remember the array list, you can add within that array an item or an object of that type. It depends on the type. Remember, this is each item, or let me not say each item, each thing within this list is of type menu item, of which this is the case. You see menu item, there's menu item here. So therefore, after I'm done, remember it needs to be within the for loop. Do not do spiritual things and put it outside the for loop. It's gonna add, it won't even add the product because this is local. It's only within this for loop. This is local. So don't be doing spiritual things and text me doing spiritual things. So temp items, not temp items, it's items. It's called items, the list that I've created, items.add. And then add item. To which item? Do not add this item. Remember, this item is all the unnecessary columns we do not want. Hence, we created a temporary item or an object item and then copied only the information that we want and left the rest. We only want the name, description, category because we need to filter by the meal type, ID because we need to pass the ID to the about meal page, price because that's what we're supposed to display, and the image because that's what we're supposed to display. So I need to pass in obj item in here. Obj item. And then once I'm done, I can just return the list because now I'm done. So return my list, which is called items. And then that's pretty much all you have to do here. That's how you get the items. So we've gotten the items done. Now we're trying to get them by ID. So let's try to retrieve from the database using this ID, right? But then remember they said you should, okay, for the about meal, they didn't talk about filtering with active, whatever. So we don't have to worry about that. So I can just use the ID. Here I was filtering with active. Here I'll filter with ID. So I'm going to say var because I'm getting one item, right? So I'll call it temp item is equals to from my table, create a variable to store that to represent the column in deep to represent the table, I mean in menu items, and then do a condition to say that when dot t, which is my table, go to my table and get the ID and then compare it dot equals to that ID that is being passed by the user in this function. And then I'm going to select that item. But then this, if I leave it like this will return multiple items. So I want to get the first one. How do I get the first one that matches the first one whereby the IDs match? Which one is that one? How do I get it? I have to say dot first or default. Default meaning it's going to return null. So give me the first one or give me default, which is null. So therefore, I can now check and say if temp item is not equals to now, then I can put an else there. So if it's not equals to now, that means the object does exist. That means the menu item exists, which is what we want, right? So therefore, I get back the menu item. But then do I want all of the information? That's always the question. Look at the question here. It says you should display the image, this name, description, and price. So these are the only things you should display. So that means when you're about to return here, you cannot return temp item. You have to actually create another object. So create so I'm going to create a menu item to select specific columns, right, from my table. Remember, we shouldn't return the whole object, the whole table. We don't want the whole table. They said you should only return the name, description, price, and image. Only those. So I'm going to create var again, var object, obj item is equals to new menu item. Why am I doing this? Because I want to select. If it wasn't the case, you could just return temp item. Done. Your code is done. But then it's not really a good thing to be returning all of that information. For now, the columns are few. What if I have 100 columns and I only want to have four columns? Now I'm returning 100 columns. I shouldn't do that. I should select only the columns that I need by creating another object, and then I copy from this object only the pieces of data that I need. So how do I copy? I just say obj item. I need the name. That's what's required. Where is it coming from? From temp item. And then I'm going to need the description dot description is equals to temp item dot description. And then obj item, what else? Price, yeah. Dot price is equals to temp item dot price. And then the last one is image. Obj item dot image is equals to temp item dot image. And then now we've retrieved only the things that we were told to retrieve: name, description, price, and image. Remember, this is get product, this is get menu item to get one. Basically, this refers to our about meal page. That's why now my focus is on reading here, since I'm implementing the get item by ID function. Here I'm done. I've already filtered it by active, and I chose this these things that I need. So let's do that. So the two decimal places, that's on the website side of things, not the service application. So here, now what I'm left to do is to just return the object. Remember, I do not want to return temp item because it has all of those unnecessary columns. Hence, I created this local variable, this local object to select only the things that I require from this object. So I'm just going to return obj item. And then if if the object does not exist, right, meaning that it's null, then just return null because the object does not exist. And then we are done with our first part of the code, which is the get items, right? The meals, the dynamically populating. Now we go to our website, right? So before I do that, let me check the time here. 44 minutes, okay. Because I want to strictly make them an hour each. So let's go, before I go to our page, let me run the service, right? So I need to go to the interface. That's how you run it. You have to run the interface. And then click on paper a service.svc. Then this is now running. So you have created a service and it's now running. And to create the service, you have to declare it this way. So that's why it's always important to copy. You see, they even tell you here, and you see, always call close. They're giving you the code. So I'm going to copy this because I might forget what it's called. And then I must not forget to close. And this is how you'd use it in Visual Basic. So you could use Visual Basic, but then C# is a bit better. It's a better tool to use. So I'm going to right click here and say add, and then I want to create a service reference, right? Basically, I want to reference my service. So it's going to create a service reference. You remember what reference means? An address. So it's going to take in an address of where the server is running, just like pointers in C++. You take an address of where that object is. In this case, the object is the service. I need to type in, I need to type in the URL. So I need to go copy the URL where it's running, basically. Copy this. It's running on localhost at that port number, and this is the name. So I need to go copy that and then go back here and then paste the address. And then I click go to just go to that site to search. It needs to search, right? It searched, it found one, and then I can just expand here and then double click. I'll see all the operations or methods that are available, which is exactly the same methods that I have, which is fine. But then before I continue, I need to copy that code for initializing a service client. And it even tells you, it says use the client variable to call operations on the service. This is for us to call the functions that are defined inside of our service, that variable. That is the main point. But then I want to remove that one and just leave it as service reference without the one. Then click OK. I don't know why it closed. Yeah, so there's the service reference. But then if you look at the service reference, it's under the project paper A web. So when you include, I need to say using paper A web dot service reference, because service reference is part of my project named paper A web or paper A underscore web. So let me go to Notepad because I might forget. Go to Notepad and then paste that code that line that I said. But then I think it's fine. I'll remember it because it's called paper A service client. So now I'm in the wrong page. I need to go to about page, home page, I mean. Okay. So this thing is a bit tricky to check to figure it out, right? Well, this time around it's a bit tricky because you have to populate, right? Dynamically populate and also should filter based on which option is chosen. So the code is going to be quite a lot. You'll see that, right? You'll see that and you see how annoying it is. The for loop is going to be long, but it's going to work. You could also use three for loops, but I'll use one loop. Just save time, right? I don't want my app to be slow. So let's look for the comment where it says dynamically populate. There it is. And don't be looking at things like ID and you think, oh, so I need to just put here run it server and then I add my products there. Nope, that's not what it means. It just has an ID. You don't that's not the main point we're looking at here. So I'm gonna scroll down at my code and look for where each product is. So if you look at each product, right? Look at all the products. They're represented by this one div. There's the first product. That's the first product. And then I scroll down, there's the first product. There's the third product. And if you look at all these products, they're within what div? This one. So they're within that div called site animate. So that's the div I'm going to have to give an ID. Be careful. Don't be putting IDs on rows and div or the other. Don't be putting the IDs on the wrong divs. You only put the div that's the div before. The immediate div before the first product. You see, this is the whole div that represents the product. What is the div before that? It's this one. So that means this is the div that I need to give an ID. And if you notice something, the products are duplicated, right? That's an advanced stage. That's an advanced way of going to solve it. Or if you want to solve it that way, it's an advanced approach. So in your case, you don't have like multiple products. You only have like a maximum of three in each category. So the duplicate three products, we can delete them. So how do I know where to delete? Remember, this is the div that contains all the first three products. So I'm going to select it so that it's highlighted. When I select a div, right, it automatically highlights where it ends. So I'm going to just click on it, like just tap there. It's going to highlight it, and then it's going to highlight where it ends. Then I scroll down to find where it ends. You see, now I know it ends there. So that means this is the next div with the other three products. I click here, and then I see it ends there. And as you can see, there's the other products. There's the price, description, name, image. There's the other products. So I can just delete from here up until here. I want to delete the duplicate products, right? Remember it was duplicated. So I delete the second set of products. If I run this, right, you see that the one on the right hand side, the three products on the right hand side, they've disappeared, they're gone. It depends on the template. Don't cram. It's not gonna work. It's not gonna end well. The HTML is different. You might get a totally different thing. Don't try to cram. It's not gonna work. So you see the other three on the side are gone now. So in my case, if I had more than three, I would have left this one and given it an ID again. And then if I keep counting here, how many products have I added? If the count is three, then I move on to this next div to add the other three. Same number on both sides. But in my case, I'm not going to have a lot of products. So that's why I deleted the second div. So if I run this again, oh, this, okay. Yeah. So that's fine. So we need to also delete, before I forget, each div represents a specific product or meal type. The div that I was deleting, that the div with the other three products, it's a div for breakfast. So I need to scroll down and go and delete for the other ones. So this is the div for lunch. So I need to delete the other three products. So this is where the first div starts. So that's where it ends. So this is where the second one with the other three products starts. And then that's where it ends. So I'm gonna delete from there. Then I go up here and then I delete. So if I run this, remember this is only now lunch. So it's now lunch and breakfast that I've deleted the divs on the right hand side or the products on the right hand side. So now if I go back here and I click lunch, you see that now on the right hand side it's also not there. Now the last one is dinner. We need to remove that because if you don't remove it, it will still show the dollars and whatnot, which will get you marked wrong. So, and we don't have more than three products, so I don't need this extra div here. That's why I'm deleting it. If I had more than three, then yeah, this video would have been long. I would have made at least each video 2 hours. So this lunch, let's go to dinner. So there's dinner. So where's the first div? That's where it starts. And then this is where it ends. So this is where the next one starts. I look for where it ends, and then I start copying from there. I delete. And then delete. You need to be very, very careful. So now when I run this, even the dinner one won't have products on the right-hand side. So if I scroll down here and then I filter, I click, you see no products on the right-hand side, no products on the right-hand side. Why did I remove? Because we don't have more than three. If we had more than three, I would have left the divs, but then I would have emptied them out so that they dynamically populate. So I have that and then done. So let's also let's also fix something here. Okay, let me drink something here. Okay, let's continue. So let's check something here. Um, okay, it's fine. Okay, it's fine. It's yeah, it's fine. I was just thinking about something, and I realized, yeah, it's not necessary for me to do that thing. So let me leave it. So remember what we talked about. What is the code for each product? It's this whole div. So starting from there, ending to there. That's the code for each div, for each product or each meal. So I'm going to delete this, copy it, or just cut it, and then remove everything within this div. Within all of the divs. So remove the other two products. Remember, we need to dynamically populate, so I need to leave it empty. And then give it an ID. And the ID needs to be related to that meal type, so that when I go to the server side or my backend, I know if I use this ID, what type of meal am I dynamically populating. So I'll call this one breakfast div, because that's my div for my breakfast. And then run at server side. And please do not do spiritual things. Do not come here. Remember, I'll naming of it. Think of this as a variable. Have you ever named a variable with a hyphen like this? Your code is gonna crash, it won't run. Don't ever do such spiritual things. If you want to put something special there, put an underscore, because this is a variable. So I'll just call it breakfast div or breakfast. That's fine. Let me not. Yeah, breakfast div is a proper ID or a proper variable to reference that meal type. And then here I select, you see, this is for lunch, right? So I select there, then there they are all the products. Remember, it's the same throughout the meal types. So I can copy from one of them, and then the rest I just delete. Remember, I already have it copied. Don't worry about why are you deleting without copying. I already have it copied. If you're paying attention, I already have it copied. So lunch div, run at um, run it server side, because I want to be able to run this ID or call this ID on the server side. And then also here, I just delete, let me see. So select, okay, so there it is. And then from there to the, you must delete, you see, these are 3 products. And then I delete them because I want to dynamically populate. And then this is my dinner div. So ID is equals to dinner div to run it on the server side, and then done, right? So I'm done changing the code this side. Now the only thing that's left is dynamically populating. Before I dynamically populate, I just Control V to paste the code. And you see that it's going to add unnecessary spaces. And if you don't remove the spaces, it won't dynamically populate well. So to always remove the spaces immediately after pasting, you press Control Z to undo the spaces between each div or each HTML tag. And then I'm just going to do this so that they're aligned they're on the same line. Yeah, for now it's fine because since I want to dynamically populate, I need to copy this thing. So what I would do is I'll just leave it like that. I won't delete anything yet. I'll delete after I've copied one. This one was decent. It was doable, Shem. Not gonna lie. Just that now you just have to. There's three categories. You needed to understand that since there's 3 categories, even in your code for your service application, you also needed to get the category. That's why we also got the category. And since you're dynamically popular, you need to redirect to the about meal page for each meal. You needed an ID. So we need to use the service reference. So using what's my project name, paper A web dot service reference, because if I don't using service reference, I won't be able to create this client so that I can call my methods inside of my service application. So I'm gonna go back here, paste that code, and then after everything's done, I need to always close the service. That's a rule. It even tells you in the doc when you run the service. And then the spaces do not need to be there. So I will use a string builder, right? So you don't have to, you can just use a string. So say using system dot text dot text. Oh, you don't have to know system dot text. Just that after coding, I realized that's where it belongs. That's where the string builder is stored. So string builder, uh, stream, or just call it stream, and do not use the same names. Do not do that. Call it build or builder or B or O or X. Call it something unique. Don't just be using my. You'll be shocked when you come back and your code says copy. Your semester test 2 says copy because all of you are using the same damn variable. Come up with something unique. It seems like you guys are comfortable with failing. It's like a luxury now to fail. Just come up with something new. Remember when the code is uploaded, it gets tested. They test all of your submissions with each other to see, didn't you guys write the same thing? So if they see, oh, it's called stream, the other one stream, the other one stream, what's going on here? You see, now the view as copy, your project says copy, and it's a big thing to say copy in the exam or in the semester test. That's suspension, disciplinary hearing. You get exclusion. You might even get excluded for 5 to 10 years. Come up with something unique. String builder. So there's the string builder. It's ready. So now we need to call our products, right? So since there's many ways I can do it. I can remember it's supposed to return a list of products. I can use dynamic to just say it'll be determined at compile time. I can do that. And dynamic means multiple, right? In our case, it can be anything, even if it's in a multiple or a singular, it can be anything. That's the nice part about dynamic. If you use var, it mainly means one variable, meaning one thing. So I can use dynamic. Let's just use dynamic. But then we know very well it's going to return a list of menu item. So dynamic items in plural is equals to client dot get items. That's what we called it. And then it gets the items. So that returns an object. Then we do a for each loop to go through each of the item, which is called the menu item. You see that it's going to crash. So there, it might work, but then I think it's gonna crash because it did crash when I was testing it out. And even when, let me show you, you see, menu item is ambiguous reference. So meaning it's ambiguous, meaning it's already defined in the system.web, in ASP.NET Web applications, it's already defined. So there's a conflict here. It's like, which one are you calling? Are you calling the one in your in your service, or the one it gets confused? For the sake of simplicity, right? I don't want you to be now cramming other code again. All you have to do is just rename the table. Use a different name. So that's why I was talking about this error that is going to give you issues. So I'm going to go back to my service and then stop it from running and rename. And then now I have to redrag. Remember the link to SQL classes. I need to redrag that table after renaming it. Do not forget to redrag. So I'm gonna go here. How do you rename? Which is it's not really a bad thing. It's not really a hard thing, I mean, to rename. So you're gonna double click the table you want to rename, and then you're gonna go down here, right? Scroll down until you find here. This is the name of the table, right? Then you just change it here to any new name. Remember what I said, do not call it menu. There's already something defined inside the SP, which is called menu. So it's gonna still cause conflict. So I will call it meal. There's no way there's something called meal inside C# or ASP. So I'll just call it a meal or food. All of you do not call it food or do not call it meal. Come up, okay, you can either use one of those, meal or food, but then do not be like, okay, we all gonna call it meal. The whole class is calling it meal. That's that's very suspicious. So some students should use food, some can use meal. Just don't just be copying and pasting. Make your degree have value, man. Hey, you're always copying and pasting. Have you ever thought about how useless that will make you look? You're always copying and pasting other people's code, right? Think for yourself once. Refresh, you must refresh the tables. It has this tendency of actually generating a whole different table even after you've renamed it. So there's another issue here that we need to fix. This new table mill, if you go to show table data, it no longer has that data. You see, it's empty. So since it's empty, we need to go back to that table, menu item, the one that was crashing, go to table data, and then select copy all the information. How do you copy? So we need to copy the data that's inside this table. How do you copy? It's simple. You see this arrow here, over here, this triangle. You're gonna select it, right? You're gonna select it. You see it selects the first column, right? And then you just double click and then you scroll down like this. Then this selects all of the columns. And then after selecting all the columns, you just right click and then you say copy, or just say Control C. Copy, because I want to copy all this data. I want to transfer it inside my meal table. And then I click on this first column, and then I right click and then I click paste. It's going to paste that data. And then I'm going to paste, and then there's the data. It has been pasted. And you can refresh your table to just make sure that this data doesn't disappear after refreshing, to just basically make sure that you did copy and paste the right way. So refresh, and then you see the data still there. That means we did copy the right way. Now we need to drag and drop this new table. Menu item is no longer important. You could leave it there, it's fine. Or I could just delete it. Me, I like deleting it, just removing it in general. So I'm just gonna remove it and then drag and drop this new table here. And then Control S, don't forget to save. Yeah, remember, it's important to save. If you look at here, look at this top here. You see this asterisk here? It means that you didn't save the changes that you've made. The table that you have dragged and dropped, you haven't saved. That is like changes you've made. You haven't saved them. So you need to click either here or Control Shift S, or here Control S, whatever way, just save the changes. So I'm gonna click there at the top to save all, and then minimize this and then close everything. So I'm pretty much done with everything now. Now I just need to rename. It's no longer menu, it's a mill. And then I'm just also going to rename my products. My functions, I mean, I'll call it get meals. And then this one I'll call it get meal. You don't have to rename them, right? It's fine. Me, I just like to move, name things according to the data type. If it's a meal, it's a meal class, then I'll call the method for getting the meals get meals. And then you need to come here and change this to meal. And then meals. Remember, it always adds an extra S or plural, because it knows that you're obviously going to have more than one of those things. And then meal, and then meal. You should have started by doing the table. I just wanted you to see the error, because you wouldn't have seen the error without doing this first. And then meal, and then there we go. So yeah, everything is fine. There's no error. Okay, now the service does that. I don't like what the service does. For some weird reason, the service sometimes doesn't pick up. Even if you changed it, it still thinks these functions still haven't been implemented. Oh, okay, I haven't renamed them. Okay, yeah, now I see. So get mail by ID. But sometimes even if after you've renamed them, it still complains. But then I think it should be fine now. Yeah. But okay, so I just forgot to rename my functions inside of my implementation file. Because the implementation file, the way you've named the function should match with the same way in the header file. So I'm going to run the header file, because that's how you run the service. And then I'm going to click on paper a service.svc for my service, SVC service. And then now the service is running. If I leave it this way, right, you'll see that it might crash even here. Right here, it might crash. Let me just put var there so it stops crashing here. You see here, it might crash here. It will say that menu, it will say this function is not defined. Or it might work and say it's defined since it's still running a previous version. So to update to run to the new version, I right click on my service reference and I say update. Any change that you make to the service reference, to the service application, you need to update the service reference. So now you should pick up that there's no function called items. You see, now it is updated. It says it does not contain a definition for get items. And there's no method called get items, which is true. I now named it get meals. And then as you can see, it's picking it up because I updated my service reference. And then each item now, so that means I actually don't have to call it items. I'll call it meals. And then this is a meal. And then this is meals. And then it's no longer a menu item, it's now a meal. And then you see now there's no error. It knows what we are referring to. It knows, oh, you're referring to the meal inside of your service reference. Inside of your service application, I mean. So now let's generate the products, right? So I'm going to say stream dot append stream.append, and then I'm going to copy the first line to append the first line. And then sometimes when you copy and paste inside the stream, it adds those extra spaces. You have to press Control Z to undo the spaces. And as you can see, it fixed the spaces. And then escape the double quotes because I don't want it to think this is where the closing double quotes are. They should actually be part of the string. And then there's a let me see, there's a technique that I learned in C Sharp, but then I think it's not applicable in this scenario. But okay, I think it is. Let me try it out. You can append an at symbol at the front there. Okay, seems like it's not applicable in this scenario. So I mean it's only applicable when you have backslashes. So if I had backslashes in there, can put that at symbol before the opening double quotes, which just means take the string literally. So when it says the backslash, it means literally a backslash, not an escape character. So that's something I learned recently. I thought it was gonna work. That would have saved us a lot of time of having to put backslashes. But then it seems like we have forced to always put the backslashes. And then there's something interesting here, right? Let me show you something interesting with this practical. Link each item's name and image to the About Meal page. So each when you get to the name and image, link the name and image to the page, to that about page. Right now I'm about to copy the image, so I need to link it. There's this thing called an anchor tag. If it's not there, you have to put it. They expect you to know it. They told you go teach yourself HTML. So they expect you to know it. You can't be complaining like complaining and saying, yeah, I don't know. They don't, that doesn't matter. You were told at the beginning of the semester that they don't teach you HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So there's this thing called an anchor tag. That's how you redirect. It's declared like this, an anchor tag. And then within the anchor tag, you can even have a paragraph or even an image. You can have anything within it, right? Within this anchor tag, you can have a paragraph like this. And then remember to close that paragraph by putting a closing. And then you can also have an image like this. You can have anything, right? And then this anchor tag, after the A, you can put an href like this to say redirect to that page. What is the page? You put it in double quotes, followed by the page name. The page name is called about meal.aspx, right? And then in our case, we also need to pass the ID for the query string so that we use the query string approach to get the ID. And then I'm going to say question mark ID is equals to that specific ID number. In this case, let's say 9, right? I'll change the 9 to the actual ID number for that meal. That's fine. I was just showing you the syntax here. So we can do that. So let me just copy this anchor tag since I'm going to use it. They said link the image. So that means I need to surround the image with this href so that the image, when you hover or you go over the image, it, it, so the image acts as a link to a page. And in order for it to act as a link, you need to put the image between an anchor tag. If you don't understand an anchor tag, go do research, go study it, because you're gonna need it. You're gonna need to understand it, how it works. It can take in anything within here. You see here, yeah, it takes in anything here. It can be an image, a button, whatever, a div, can be anything. So I'm going to pass in an image because they said the image should be redirected. You can use the image to redirect to the page. So I'm going to copy this, append it here. If it adds spaces, you see it added spaces here. So I need to press Control Z to undo them. So Control Z, it undoes the spaces. And then I need to put a backslash. Oh, I forgot to put a backslashes here again. I was explaining the add symbol. Put a backslash here. And then here we need to put the image tag here, right? So I need to put that. So I need to copy my image tag. So copy this whole tag, this whole line, cut to copy it. And then I put it here within the space. I paste. And then it's going to create add spaces or Control Z to undo the spaces. And then there's my image. And then everywhere where I see a double quotes, if it's not the closing double quotes, I escape them to say that skip them. This is not the closing double quotes. And then escape, escape, and then escape, and then done. So now I need to dynamically populate the image. You see, there's the image here. So I need to zoom out. Okay, this is quite going to be very zoomed out. But then this image, right? I need to replace this section of code whereby I've highlighted there with the actual image name. So that means I need to divide this string to be two strings. There should be one string on the left, which is this one over here. But then remember the string on the left, it has an opening double quotation marks. So I need to put a closing there like this. So for it to be a complete string on its own. And then this one on this side, it has no opening here. So let me put the spaces here so that you can see. So if I to view it in this way, right, let me undo this. If you look at this, right, there's the opening, double quotes, right? And then there's no closing. Remember, this one is escaped. It's not the closing one. So it's missing a closing one. So I need to put a set of closing double quotes there. And then this side, we have a set of closing double quotes, but then we need opening ones. So, and then this one is escaped. Remember, this is escaped, so it can't be the opening one. So I need to put opening here, only one, not two. And then plus to do string concatenation. And then I'm going to go back here and say plus string concatenation. And then here now I provide the mill name. And then remember each mill within the for loop is stored inside this mill object name or variable. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to say mill dot name. No, not, is it name? No, image. My bad, it's image. This is an image. Yeah, don't make that mistake. It's an image. And then we are done with that. And then they said also the name. So for now, we're not at the name. There's the name. We're not there yet. We're still here. So let's append the next div or the next HTML tag. And then I'm going to copy this, cut, paste, Control Z, not delete, man. Control Z to remove the spaces, escape sequence, and then append the next HTML tag. So append the next HTML tag, which is the name of the product. So you see, remember we talked about anchor tag. So the name needs to actually come here like this. So it needs to go there. So that means I need to undo this and copy this anchor tag first, which basically the same way we did the image. Remember, I haven't added the ID there. I need to also add the ID. So let me add the ID. So let me undo Control Z. So let's add the ID. Remember the 9 should be replaced with the actual ID. So I can put spaces before the 9 and after the 9 to show that there needs to be a unique value that comes there. So you see, we have the opening, the double quotes, but then we have no closing. So I need to put closing there immediately after the equal sign. And then I put a plus. So that becomes one of the strings on the left. And then this string on the right, it has no opening. Remember, this one is escaped. So I need to put an opening. So I put double quotes, but only one set of double quotes. And then plus, and then now I need to put in the actual ID here. So I delete the 9 and then I say mail dot ID. And then it's going to pass the ID to the about page, right? About mail page. So when the about mail page is loaded, the about mail receives a variable called ID, which has this value. And we can get the value of that variable by, it's called a query string. It's part of this query string. And then here I'm going to escape. Then I'm going to escape. So there's the string. So here, this is where the H5 goes, right? That's where the H5 goes for the name, right? Which is this HTML tag. So I'm going to cut it, and then in between here, I put that HTML tag. But then I need to press Control Z to undo the spaces, and then backspace to every double quotes that I see that do not represent the closing double quotes. I need to escape them. After I've escaped them, I need to replace this name. So this name is split it up in like this, right? So I need to make two strings. There's one string on the right plus, and then there's one string on the left plus, like we've been doing the whole time. And then here I'm gonna replace this name with the actual mill name. So mill dot name. Done. And then we go back here to this 9 again, the same thing we did. Put double quotes there, and then plus, and then plus, and then here we put in the actual ID, mail dot ID. And then we're almost done. We're actually not almost done. Remember, we need to choose based on category. Almost forgot about that. This one is not as easy as those other practicals. This one is, you need to actually know what you're doing. So this is the description. So I don't need to type this description because there'll be text there. So here there'll be text, the actual description. So I'll just cut this and then say stream dot append, and then I put that HTML tag there. And then within here, there should be text, right? There should be the description. So therefore I need to split up into two strings. So put a closing there, and then plus, and then put an opening, and then put a closing tag here, plus. So now I can put in the actual description, mail dot description. And then that's the meal description. Done. And then stream dot append. There's the H6 tag, which is the price. So we're actually displaying the price now. Control Z to undo spaces. And then backslash. Yeah. So there needs to be, okay, this dollar sign should be replaced with the rands symbol. So R, we're in South Africa. So R will be displayed as text. So I don't want to I don't want to, remember the price in the database is saved as a money, right? Meaning is decimal. So it's not saved as a string. It's not like the R is part of the price. So I need to leave it there as part of the HTML. And then put a closing there. Then put an opening there. Remove the extra one. Plus to make it be two strings. So here I need to display the price. So mail dot price. But then if you check the price, they said it should be rounded off to 2 decimal places. So format the price to 2 decimal places. But then they only refer to the about mail page, which is fine. That means the marks will only be allocated in the about mail. So that means here I can leave it as it is, but then I don't like doing that. I'm going to round it off. How do you round it off? So this is the price, right? So I'm gonna cancel this. There's the math class inside C sharp, capital M. So math, and there are static methods where you can call. And what's the task that I'm supposed to do here? They said you must format. Format just basically means round. So I need to call the round function to round to so many decimal places. And all methods inside C sharp, they start with an uppercase letter. That's the rule. So dot capital R round function, which takes in 2 parameters. You could take you could take one, right? Which means that it's going to round it off to the nearest integer. It's even written here, it's explained. So you must, if you can't find something, and if you don't know something,